All right, well, let's go ahead and begin. Looks like some folks are still joining us today. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Bo Kickless. I'm the public lands advocate with Conservation Colorado based out of Denver. Just a quick background on Conservation Colorado. We're the state's largest conservation advocacy group. We have offices in Denver, Durango, Grand Junction, Pueblo, and Carbondale. And we work to protect people and the land, air, water, and wildlife that we all depend on. Really excited to be with you here today with our close partners at Rocky Mountain Wild, who are going to be presenting their latest mapping project on the updated oil and gas wildlife rules that take effect tomorrow, which is exciting. Before I turn it over to our next panelist, I just want to introduce who's all with us today. And first is Bob Randall. He is going to be providing an overview of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission rulemaking process. Bob's with the law firm Kaplan, Kirsch, and Rockwell and was formerly the director of the State Department of Natural Resources under former Governor and now Senator Hickenlooper. Also joining us today from Rocky Mountain Wild are Terry Parker, the executive director, and Alison Galinsky, Rocky Mountain Wild's GIS director, who will be presenting on the mapping and GIS project on the new wildlife rules. So now I'm going to turn it over to Bob for a short overview on the COGCC.
Great, thanks, Bo, and good afternoon, everyone. The Commission's process to update the maps we'll be discussing today began with a stakeholder process in November of 2019 to discuss the scope of the rules to implement Senate Bill 19-181. Rulemaking was necessary because the General Assembly in Senate Bill 181 imposed on the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission a new substantive duty to protect wildlife by ensuring that adverse impacts to wildlife are avoided wherever possible and that remaining impacts are minimized and mitigated. So that's all language from the statute. Formal notice of rulemaking was published in March of 2020 and then delayed due to the pandemic as the Commission shifted to planning its first ever virtual hearing. The Commission staff circulated its early thinking on revised wildlife rules in May of 2020. That included some straw dog rules along with a frequently asked questions document and an explanation of the high priority habitat areas, and it solicited impact from the parties. The Commission staff published proposed 1200 series rules. Again, those are the wildlife rules of the Commission, and high priority habitat maps in June for party feedback in the formal rulemaking process. The staff then revised those draft 1200 series rules 3 times in October and November as it considered and responded to party feedback. Ultimately, the Commission adopted revised wildlife rules and maps just before Thanksgiving on November 23rd of last year. The rulemaking hearing itself involved the participation of over 90 parties, the submittal of extensive pleadings advocating for and against various proposals, the submittal of hundreds of pages of witness testimony, and presentation from dozens of witnesses, including expert witnesses like PhDs in wildlife habitat or wildlife biology, as well as citizen testimony. All told, the Commission's rulemaking hearing spanned nearly 200 hours of presentations, witness testimony, and deliberations, including over 40 hours on the 1200 series wildlife rules alone, conducted entirely over Zoom. In a word, this was extraordinary in terms of the scope of the issues that they addressed, the degree of public participation, the time spent by commissioners hearing and considering and deliberating testimony, and in the protections for wildlife and its habitat to implement the new direction in Senate Bill 181. Now I'll turn it over to Terry Parker for an overview of Rocky Mountain Wild and the MAPS project. Terry.
Thanks, Bob. My name is Terry Parker. I'm executive director at Rocky Mountain Wild. We are a nonprofit located here in Denver that works to protect, connect, and restore wildlife and wildlands. We use a variety of tools to do that. We engage citizen scientists in our work. We do research, we do some advocacy and some legal work. But one of the big pieces of our work is mapping and geospatial analysis, which is this project. Around our office, we often say you can't protect it if you can't map it. So finding things on the map is really important to our work. And we joined in the rulemaking process early, and Alison was part of that process from the beginning. And we're just really excited to be able to take all of the information that came out of that and put it into some visuals that help people actually see what was done. It's a pretty historic moment actually here in Colorado, and we're really proud to be part of it. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and turn it right over to Alison so that she can show you what we accomplished.
Thank you, Terry. Just to explain the acronym in my title, GIS Director. GIS is a Geographic Information System or Geographic Information Science. And so it's the science and technology of mapping and of analyzing things that happen on the map. So let me go ahead and share a story map that I created to talk about the rulemaking process and the protections for wildlife. A story map is basically a technology that allows you to combine maps along with pictures and text to tell a story. And this is the story of the oil and gas rules and how they protect wildlife. And you interact with it by scrolling through the story. And it starts with the information that Bob already talked about how new rules are going into effect tomorrow that protect wildlife and also public health and other things that are important to Coloradans, and allow oil and gas to be developed without impacting wildlife. Since wildlife cannot relocate when a project is going on, we need to protect them. And the first map in the story shows how where the strongest protections are for wildlife. And this map has a slider that you can move back and forth to compare the protections under the old rules. And the old rules did have protections for certain areas in Colorado that were called restricted surface occupancy. They're shown in this map in orange. And the new rules added 5.5 million acres to that. And those are areas where there's limitations on ground disturbance from oil and gas activities. One of the biggest changes was the addition of many river and stream corridors and other riparian areas, so areas that are wet and that are very important for wildlife. Along with those areas where ground disturbance is severely limited, there are also areas with other restrictions, such as only allowing a certain number of oil and gas locations, one location per mile typically. And in all of those areas, regardless of whether it's a stronger protection or a weaker protection, if there's going to be oil and gas activity in those areas, the operator must consult with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and come up with a plan that will not harm the wildlife in the area. And again, this map has a slider, allows you to look at areas that were protected under the old rules in orange. And those are areas where operators must consult with Colorado Parks and Wildlife before doing operations in those areas. And this map shows the new areas, and that added over 12.7 million acres of areas where wildlife are protected. The rest of the story digs into this a little bit by looking at 4 different animals and 4 different parts of the state and how they're protected. Bighorn sheep are the state symbol, the state animal. And one of the areas that I didn't know until recently has a lot of bighorn sheep is the Purgatory Canyon area. This is an area in southeastern Colorado with very steep cliffs, beautiful area. It's also near the Pinyon Canyon Army site, and you can see on the map, the little insert map, where it is in Colorado. And under the old rules, again shown in orange, there were some protections for bighorn sheep, and those protected areas have been expanded under the new rules, along with additional protections along river and stream corridors. Next part of the story is about beginning migration. This is very important to Rocky Mountain Wild. We do a lot of work on wildlife connectivity. The specific area I'm going to talk about is North Park in north central Colorado. It's the headwaters of the North Platte River, a lot of great wetland areas. It's also the part of the North Platte mule deer migration corridor, which has been extensively studied. And this map is showing all of the areas that are consultation triggers, and also showing areas that study has shown are the most important for mule deer migration, as shown in the sort of purplish color. And under the old rules, there was a fair amount of areas that required consultation in North Park, but none of these areas were specifically protected for wildlife migration. And so there are some gaps in these important migration corridors. Under the new rules, there are areas specifically protected for mule deer migration and for elk migration and other migration, other animals that aren't in North Park. Also wanted to shout out to fish species, since there are very good protections for aquatic species. Colorado pike minnow is one of the at-risk species in the Colorado River. You can see it looks like a pretty big at this point. They were even bigger in the past when the rivers were healthier. And in this case, we're looking at the area near the Beck, and excuse the phone. This map shows the protections under the old rules did not particularly protect the river corridor. Under the new rules, the river corridor itself is protected, and many of the tributary streams as well have strong protections. Finally, we'll end with Gunnison sage grouse. Gunnison sage grouse is a bird that Rocky Mountain Wild has been working to protect for many years. And Dry Creek Basin in southwestern Colorado is one of the satellite populations, very important for the species to survive. And under the old rules, there was a small area protected for the Gunnison sage grouse during their mating season. Under the new rules, those areas have been increased. And these protections are really important in Colorado. They help the recreation industry, including people who are fishing, people who are hiking, people who are hunting. And at the end of this, there is an interactive map that with some instructions about how to use it, so that you can dig in deeper if you want to look at a particular part of the state, and you can click on things and find out exactly which species are protected. So let me stop this, and thank you very much for listening. I'm really excited that these rules are going into effect tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Allison. Well, kudos to Rocky Mountain Wild for an extensive mapping project. I find it very impactful to be able to see what the rules in writing look like through visuals, and appreciate you all putting this project together and this work together to be able to demonstrate the impact that this will have, for positive impact that this will have for wildlife across the state. And so with that, I think we can open it up for some questions. Participants should, I'll just note, participants should have received the link to the maps when you've registered, so you can do some poking around there. We're also recording this program and can follow up again for those who have joined late that would like to view it from the beginning. But let's go ahead and open up for questions. People can drop them in the chat, or I believe you can use the, if you have the raise your hand function, you can click on that and I should be able to unmute you to ask your question. Looks like we have a question coming in to, which is, can you talk about the impacts, can you talk about the economic impacts of wildlife and fish in the state and how this will help? Suzanne O'Neill, I believe, is on. Suzanne, if you're interested in fielding this question, I can bring you in. Let me see. Is Suzanne still with us?
Yes.
Were you able to hear the question?
No.
Oh, okay. I will rephrase it. So we had a question coming in around asking to address the economic impacts of wildlife and fish in Colorado, and how these new rules help that economic impact.
Well, we have the past studies that talk about $6 billion benefit between or among hunting, angling, wildlife viewing, and parks. And so with the maps Alison presented, we expect even more beneficial enjoyment of wildlife as a result of these rules.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. That's super helpful. And I think we can also do some follow-up with folks on some of the hard data. I believe I want to say it's something like 230,000 direct jobs in the outdoor recreation industry in Colorado, including the sporting industries as well. So significant economic contributor in the state that these rules will help support. Other questions that folks may have? Okay. Well, I'm not seeing further questions come in or hands being raised. Like I said, this is being recorded, so we will follow up with all of our attendees with the recording. So for those that join late can catch the beginning portions of it. And like I mentioned, you all should have access to the maps and the story map at this point to poke around. Of course, we are also available for follow-up should, once you start digging around, have any more questions for us that we can field for you or point you in the right direction to folks that can answer your questions. And I think with that, we can conclude for this afternoon. Thank you all for participating and joining us.